plants. The green frontier. These are the discussions of the podcast Horticult. Its continuing mission: to talk about strange new cultivars, to seek out new flowers and plant them, to boldly garden like no one has before. Hello, this is Blaine from the Horticult. What's up, everybody? Today's episode is number 37 on succulents. And we go over the distinct attributes of a succulent. We talk a little bit about its shape, maintenance, what it likes, what it prefers, a little bit of practices that you can do to make them healthier. They're very easy to propagate. They do well in pots. Go into all these things and how you can have an awesome succulent for your home. And let's get it on. I'm Blaine.
And I am B-Rad.
And we are the Horticult. And so are you. Thanks for listening. So this episode, we're going to try to talk about succulents. Because succulents kind of have this new following, I guess. A lot of people are finding them and they're making them good indoor house plants and doing all this stuff. So I thought we could address succulents, and I think they are a good house plant.
Yeah, they can be for sure. I'm noticing more and more in the nurseries and big box stores that you'll see these really cool combinations, these succulent combinations.
And they're really easy to care for. They're more in arid areas of the world. They have adapted to kind of being neglected if you're not very good at watering your houseplants. Maybe you should get a succulent.
And the thing is it's it requires less water, but as neglecting goes, it would show that succulent would still show. These weak, feeble little stems and these leaves that are just like a little bit, maybe either anemic and or potentially just off color. So don't think you can get away with nothing.
Well, probably the most common succulent that I can think of is probably aloe. I mean, who doesn't? I've seen that all over, and it's great for using it for medicinal purposes, for sunburns and such. Mm-hmm. You could just squirt it, rip the thing off, and right on your arm where you're sunburned, and it works out just fine. But yeah, my mom used to have those all the time. I was trying to think of a way that we can kind of describe what attributes a succulent has that makes it a succulent. Because we were saying before, cactus is probably in the family of succulent, but not all succulents are cactus. So what are some attributes that make a succulent? And I was thinking succulent is referring to having a fatty leaf. So the adaptation that these plants have developed, it's not a big root system, so they don't have a root system. I mean, a great big root system, like a woody plant or some other herbaceous perennials, and they store their nutrients in the leaf. So some store it in their trunk. They've adapted to store it in the trunk. Some have adapted to store their energy in bulbs and tubers and in their root systems, stuff like that. These guys have developed to store it in their leaves. So that's where they use their energy or store their energy. Mm-hmm. So they don't make this huge gigantic root system because they're in an arid environment. They don't get a lot of rain, so they just kind of like a camel.
Oh, that's a good way to look at that, yeah. With those big fleshy, fat leaves.
So the other very I guess old timey succulent that I've seen a lot here would be the hens and chicks.
Yeah.
Like that one. There's just so many varieties of them, though. But those are the two that come to mind that I think a lot of people can relate to. That they know and have seen aloe, hens and chicks. I mean, whose grandma didn't have aloe and hens and chicks? Did your grandma have one?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I guarantee it. Yeah.
Yeah, I guarantee it.
Well, and I think at the time, I was younger, I looked at that and I'm like, that's such a boring plant. But now, after having been in the industry especially and realizing the beautiful qualities of the different geometric variations and I mean, I've seen some that look like they have cobwebs over them, but that's how they're supposed to be. You know what I'm saying? Sorry. So just many different patterns and colors and shapes of the hens and chicks. Really, really cool. Good plant.
And I've seen these popping up a lot more in our area. Are the dang it! Now I forgot. They have those big plumes that come out of the middle.
Oh yeah, Hesperalo.
Yeah. And then those are really cool. They have they have that little red color on the blossoms, and so those are kind of popping up around here.
Have you ever tried those before?
No, but I did maintenance them at the U. So we had some growing at the U, and
oh, very good, very good.
And so we played with those a little bit.
Yeah, I tried those out in my yard and learned a few things as far as, and this probably goes for any succulent and or cacti. Yeah, and anyway, that is when you put these in your yard, these succulents or cacti or this Hesperalo, this in particular variety, is be aware and try to provide sharp drainage. That was one thing that I did not do. And, it got watered with the lawn, the overhead irrigation, and it flourished until the winter time. And the roots, I believe, just stayed too wet, froze, and those beautiful plants for the first year never came back as they were supposed to for the second year. So, bummer.
Yeah, totes.
But anyway, sharp drainage is super important, and to achieve that really, really easily, simply in your landscape is to just make a berm. Yeah, everyone knows what a berm is. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
It's a big old pile of dirt.
So you plant them on the berm so the water doesn't seep in and it runs off?
Yeah. It's to keep the roots from being waterlogged over the winter. So it just depends on where you're at, geographically speaking. But here, in Utah, we don't get a lot of water during the summer, and then the months that we do get water, you just don't want these puddle spots and expect your succulents to do well.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, that's a really good one.
Well, that's the adaptation that I think that makes them very good in a pot.
Definitely,
because then you don't have to water it so much, and then it's getting that heat and it can handle it. Like, that's where I've seen him the most too up here, are in pots because they handle it so well.
Yeah.
So you could play with them. Like, there's a lot of different colors and varieties and shapes and sizes, and you could really do mix and match, and make these really cool, ornate, potted, succulent pots.
Yeah. Now with that comes, you do need to maintain those. The cool thing about it is it's not like your typical plants that grow a half an inch a day. Where these succulents, every so often you need to go in and just kind of trim them up. And the great thing about it is they propagate easily most of the time.
Yep.
And so I have some cactus in my yard, and it's hardy to this zone 5. And a lot of the time I have to go in there and just trim out some of those pads And I mean, literally, I just toss them over to a side area where there's nothing growing that gets plenty of light. And by the next year, that pad now has roots down in the ground. It's a brand new cactus plant, easy to propagate, super easy. And that really goes with a lot of the other succulents. You know, like if you have indoor succulent plants. One that comes to mind when I was working in the greenhouse at Linden Nursery, was called String of Pearls. Mm. That's a common name, obviously, but you can imagine what that looks like, right?
White.
Green. But I mean, but they would be in these hanging baskets, and it would just
trail.
Yeah, you've probably seen them like that. It's the same size as like what pearls would be, just attached to each other with a string. Imagine that. But anyway, if you get one of those plants and you just kind of see it cascading over, it just adds such a cool look. And this thing is like, I water it like once every 3 weeks or something, you know, because it does store that water and nutrients in each one of those little capsules. And that's just one example of the many that are out there. Another one really cool that I came across in the greenhouse, called Black Rose. It's Aeonium black rose, and I think Aeonium's probably the genus, but Black Rose is the common name if you were to Google that, and it is just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. This black kind of ornate looking petals come out, and it does make it look like a rose, but it's simply just the leaves that give it that look. Anyway, just a couple I wanted to throw out there real quick that I remember.
Well, there's a lot of different uses. So sedums are in that family group of succulents because they have very little root system. I think that's where I would put them. Yeah. And they have bigger, little thick, they're not as thick, like what I'm thinking, but they still have fattier leaves than a regular kind of, plant.
Yeah, kind of spongy, kind of squishy.
Yeah, a little spongy, a little squishy. So those can be used for a number of things. So you can use them as a ground cover because they spread so quickly, and they can trail off walls. They can also be very adaptable to pots. So containers. We had a bunch on rooftops gardens because they use kind of like an artificial soil for roofs. It's there's a lot of different ways to do it. So the one that I dealt with the most rooftop garden at the U was actually at the Natural History Museum. And so here we have the roof surface, and then there was this rubber membrane, and it led the water down to to get off the roof. But then on top of that was just this light kind of soil gravel mix, Eudolite. And so it very easily drained, being on the roof, straight sun all day. So you want it lighter. You don't want to have the roof deal with all that weight of regular soil. So they use this Eudolite, which is a lot lighter and easy to drain with. And it's an organic material. I mean, it's mined or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then it was all sedums.
That's cool.
Different colors of sedums. Cool. Yeah, we were on the roof, and we had to have our little harnesses and strap in just to weed and everything, and we would fertilize and put some pre-emergent on it and do all the stuff that we would regularly do for a garden. But it was a great experience to go up there.
Yeah. And
my supervisor, it was one of his main, trying to get this under control because it had kind of been a little bit forgotten up there. But yeah, if you go to the Natural History Museum up in Salt Lake, and you can go there's a little boardwalk that takes you outside, and they have
things that you can look at along the mountain, on the other side of the mountain. So like where the Bingham Canyon mine is and stuff like that. And it points out where they are for visitors. And